Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we are looking at some absolutely wild and fascinating source material. We're going to completely unpack the esoteric channeled dialogues from Ryuho Okawa's writings about the ancient, legendary continent of Mu. Now, whether you're a longtime student of spiritual texts, or maybe you're just kind of curious about alternative history, we're going to map out these incredible claims together to see what cosmic secrets are actually hidden inside. It's going to be a wild ride, for sure, so let's get right into it.
Okay, let's dive into this explosive question straight from Chapter 4 of our source text. It's a premise that literally upends our entire traditional historical timeline. Look, we're not just talking about ancient people running around with primitive stone tools here. The text actually asks us to consider a scenario where a highly advanced civilization, we're talking 17,000 years ago, possessed the capacity for total, absolute annihilation. It brings up this incredibly haunting idea, right? What if the existential threats we face today are actually just ancient history repeating itself?
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look closely at our source, a text called The True Heart of Lamu. The whole narrative here is framed as a spiritual reading, essentially a channeled dialogue with the consciousness of Lamu, who was the grand king of this ancient empire. According to this text, the Mu civilization wasn't just some lost island out in the ocean. It was this highly advanced melting pot, and I mean a cosmic melting pot. We're talking heavy, direct extraterrestrial intervention, a complete fusion of mystery and science that, allegedly, completely surpasses even our own 21st century capabilities.
So that brings us to the first major mystery the text tries to unravel, the very real suspicion of ancient weapons of mass destruction. The dialogue in Chapter 4 confronts the idea that the devastating conflicts on Earth during the Mu era might have actually been fought with technologies terrifyingly similar to our modern nuclear arsenals. It's a concept that completely forces us to reevaluate the sheer scale of destruction that was possible in ancient times. Well, at least according to this specific esoteric framework. You know, during the channeled session, the interviewer actually presses this issue directly. They ask point-blank, did things like nuclear wars happen? And it's a super relatable human question, right? We are trying to understand this massive ancient lore through the lens of our own modern anxieties. We know from the text that the Mu Empire ultimately collapsed, and the interviewer is just trying to figure out if these earthly conflicts literally ended in nuclear annihilation.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the exact nuance of Lamar's response here. The consciousness replies, "I didn't say nuclear." So he absolutely acknowledges that massive, catastrophic weapons were indeed used, but he specifically rejects the modern terminology of nuclear arms. This tiny linguistic correction in the text is so vital because it completely points the reader away from standard human, earthly inventions and towards something far, far more exotic.
Which begs the question, if they weren't our standard nuclear weapons, what exactly were they? Here, the source transitions us from earthly weapons straight into extraterrestrial technology. The text reveals that the Mu civilization was essentially powered by highly advanced alien tech. These conflicts weren't fought with rudimentary human inventions. No, they were fought with incredibly sophisticated systems brought directly to Earth by beings from entirely different star systems. It's a real game changer that completely shifts the scale of the civilization we are picturing.
I mean, just take a look at the level of technology the text is describing here. We're talking about massive solar energy amplification systems, literally capturing and magnifying the sun's power in ways far beyond what we can do today. They had advanced gas-powered airships running on lighter-than-air synthesized gases, and, perhaps most incredibly, the text mentioned supersonic flying saucers that acted almost like personal vehicles, basically cosmic taxis. It describes these extraterrestrials detaching from massive motherships and descending in these smaller craft. It is this vivid, highly detailed sci-fi landscape, but it's presented to us as ancient history. But here's the catch. Having all this highly advanced sci-fi technology doesn't guarantee a utopia. Actually, the text shifts our focus to the real climax of this narrative, the true root cause of Munka's societal collapse. With all this incredible technology at their fingertips, what actually brought the empire down? While the reading insists that the ultimate weapon wasn't the hardware itself, it was the software of the human, or in this case, alien heart.
So, the crucial point is what Lamu explains next. He states that in most cases, the ultimate settlement of earthly disputes was driven by sheer, unadulterated hatred. The text argues that animosity and spiritual degradation acted as the exact equivalent of a nuclear bomb. It was mutual destruction, totally fueled by negative emotions. They had the advanced tech, sure, but their spiritual immaturity and deeply rooted grudges led to a complete, devastating collapse, where both sides were just entirely wiped out.
But wait, why was there so much deeply rooted hatred and conflict to begin with? Well, this is where the source introduces a massive cosmic twist. The entities fighting these wars, the very souls inhabiting the Mu Empire, weren't even originally from Earth. They were refugees from dying stars. The text explains that Earth essentially served as a sanctuary for various extraterrestrial beings who had literally been forced out of their own galactic homes.
And the source provides an absolutely incredible cosmic roster of these alien refugees. We're talking about souls migrating to Earth from the Pleiades and Reptilian systems, both of which, according to the text, had completely collapsed or been destroyed. Then we have beings from Vega, whose companion star was annihilated. Others came seeking refuge from the Magellanic Clouds and the Andromeda Galaxy. Earth wasn't just organically developing its own localized culture, it was actively absorbing the surviving, battered populations of massive galactic-scale catastrophes.
To really grasp the sheer scale of the galactic displacement described in the book, we have to define what these origins actually mean in this context. Beings from places like Vega and the Reptilian systems weren't just space explorers out for a joyride, they were asylum seekers. The text explicitly states that space is filled with these constant cycles of invasion, and those who were repeatedly targeted or defeated fled straight to Earth. But, and this is absolutely key here, they didn't just bring their supersonic saucers and fancy solar tech. They brought all their cosmic trauma, their deep defense mechanisms, and their historical, long-standing conflicts right along with them.
Let's move to and see how this builds, because you have to wonder, why allow all these traumatized, technologically advanced cosmic refugees to gather on one single planet? Well, the source reveals a grand purpose behind this whole gathering. It wasn't just some random accident. It was a deliberate spiritual design. Earth was actively chosen to be a testing ground to blend these incredibly diverse cosmic souls together. And this brilliantly illustrates the core argument of the source. When you look at earthly conflicts alongside these specific alien origins, things start to make sense. The wars of Mu were actually the clash of these diverse extraterrestrial backgrounds. All that unresolved space baggage, that was the true catalyst for the wars on Earth. They were literally fighting out galactic-level resentments on an earthly battlefield.
The text refers to this very deliberate mixing as the Cantare blend. From a massive macro perspective, the Earth's guiding consciousness wanted to see how much of the Pleiades teachings, the Vega teachings, the Magellan teachings, and the Andromeda teachings could actually be integrated together. Mu was essentially a grand spiritual experiment. It was a melting pot specifically designed to forge a new, unified, earthly humanity out of incredibly diverse and conflicting cosmic backgrounds. The destruction? Well, that was just part of the agonizing growing pains of this massive integration process.
Which brings us to a really profound final thought. You see, the text isn't just offering us a wild sci-fi history lesson. It's presenting a very stark warning. If a civilization armed with incredibly advanced technology was utterly destroyed because of deeply rooted hatred and a complete inability to blend their diverse backgrounds, well, are we just repeating the cycle today? As our own modern technology advances exponentially, are we actually addressing the spiritual and emotional maturity required to wield it? Or are we just building shiny new weapons packed with the exact same old cosmic baggage? It's a deeply cautionary parallel from the lore of Mu that gives us a whole lot to ponder about our modern world. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. Keep questioning and keep learning.